For the direct celebrations, those should be our Muslim brothers and sisters. And for the ones who indirectly benefit, people like me, people called Joanna, and people called Elizabeth. And so we send you celebrations from the show today. And so today we're going to be talking about the socio-economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And joining me on this discussion is Joanna Atukunda and Elizabeth Kemigisha. And I'm going to open it up right now and invite Joanna to please introduce yourself to the audience and in what capacity you come to the show. You're welcome, Joanna.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I hope you can hear me right well. It's really a pleasure to be here. I've been looking forward to having so many of these discussions, and yes, I've been following Isabella on so many different platforms, and I was waiting for when I'll have a conversation with her. Yes, so I am your online fan. So yeah, my name is Joanna Atukunda. I hold a bachelor's degree in gender and women health. I am so passionate about women health, women in leadership, and quality education for a girl child. I am currently the administrator and co-founder, League of Young Professionals Uganda, that one particularly deals in mentoring young people to read books. Yeah, we just need more young leaders to read books. And then I am also founding an organization to help the children dwelling in slums of Uganda to be able to understand the sexual reproductive health rights and then be able to access quality education as well. So that's briefly just about me. I am also a Mandela Washington Fellow right now. And yeah, I'm doing my courses in leadership, public management, and yeah, really glad to be here. Thank you, Isabella.
Thank you, Joanna. And I will now invite Liz. Liz, you're muted.
Hi, Isabella. Hi, Joanna. Okay. Perfect. Hi, Joanna. Hi, our host, Isabella, and Center for Constitutional Rights. My name is Elizabeth Kemigisha. I'm a feminist lawyer who's currently working and organizing with FIDA Uganda, which is the Association of Women Lawyers. I am also a co-host on Black No Sugar, an online vlog for women to talk about things that concern women, and all our people that come to the show are women. So yeah, I think that's it. And at FIDA, I do economic justice work. And I think that's how I'm here today. I'm really glad to be part of this conversation. Thank you, Bella.
Thank you very much, Liz. And maybe to delve straight into the conversation for today is more, icebreaker for the day. But reports have shown that countries that are led by women are managing the pandemic better because we also know that countries that are led by women are not as diverse. So some haters, not haters, but a lot of people might say that that the issue of comparison is questionable because you don't have a lot of countries that are being led by women. But so far, countries like Finland, Denmark, Iceland, Slovakia have contributed to the women. And so we'll be shouting, oh, but Belgium. And I know that reports, for people who will be shouting Belgium on this call, reports have also shown that Belgium is an outlier. So we shall not be discussing Belgium today. But to start off this conversation, what are your thoughts on countries that are managing the pandemic better, and the fact that a couple of them are headed by women, and why do you think that is the case? Joanna, would you like to go first?
Thank you, Bella. First of all, for someone to be able to give results better, you have to be in positions of influence. So yes, countries that are being led by women are managing the pandemic better. One, because the women who usually form like the biggest part of society and in the areas of influence when it comes to family and then society and then the bigger picture of the country, it makes it better. I think so, and not even think so, I know so, because then the women there have the right to resources, have the right to make decisions when it comes to the social aspect, when it comes to the economic aspect. So I think I would rightfully say, yes, they are managing better because they are in the positions of influence, better than the countries where women are just in positions because they have to be there and they are just sitting at the table, but not literally making decisions as per what regards women, what regards society, what regards the young people. So when women are in positions of influence, I think they do much better. Yeah, so I think I agree with that.
Thank you very much, Joanna. Liz, would you like to weigh in on the subject? Elizabeth?
Yes, yes, Bella. I'll just keep my video off for the time when I'm just speaking, because my bandwidth, if it's playing games, and then have it back on when I'm answering some of these questions. It is true that what you say, Isabella, that countries that are led by women have been seen to respond to COVID better and in a very significant manner, that is to COVID-19. And I agree when Joanna says that, yes, for you to be able to make such decisions, you must be in a place of power. And I think that's why in those countries, those respond to better. They are able to respond better is now a lesson for maybe male-led countries to learn. I was just reading about it on The Guardian, and I think a few months back, and they were saying countries led by women, and I don't know, I have a problem with it, but I guess the analyst I was reading about then said countries led by women lead like they're working, how can I say it? How did you phrase it? Like they manage countries like they manage families, right? And I know I have a problem with one of those analyses to things, for example, comparing to how women lead to how they run families. But his analysis was because they run countries the way they run families, that they look at the long-term effects of something and they are able to make decisions, putting into consideration what the long-term outcome will be. Yeah, and I don't know, I do not like that the fact that it's leaned towards them leading families, because that's where women have always been, and we know the problem with domestication, quote unquote, of women in such public spaces. But I found it really interesting that he said because women are able to look at the long term and they're not struggling with egos on my economy is not going to be looked at like it's not working, on how do I manage the situation better for the long-term gain of my people. And we saw that countries that did that lockdown before most of these other male-led countries, while it will have an economic impact, but we did not have so many people dying. So with people locked down, you'd see even the restrictions put in place are coming not from a place of panic, that we have so many deaths happening, we must just lock down on almost quickly without putting in place this safety net. So I want to believe that, yeah, I agree with him. I'm just a bit skeptical to totally agree with the comparison to running countries like homes, but I do agree. I don't know what your thoughts are, Bella.
So I hear you, and I totally agree, but I think it's one of those things that we keep talking about, the fact that language is such a great either advancer or checker of inequalities and how women are treated. And so it is to say that that people must be conscious. Journalists, people in the media fraternity must be conscious that even as they write from a supposedly very good place, they are not advancing an inequality or advancing a bias or advancing a negative social norm. Because at the end of the day, for those of us who look, who understand the power of language, then their articles become problematic for us. And I hear you on that. I really agree. But delving into the conversation, crises across the world in the past and even right now in the future are very impactful. You know, the very impactful one on populations, on the people, on policies, on programs. But there is a conversation that we never ever have: the fact that crises are always gendered; they are never gender neutral. And so coming to this conversation today is to say that because crises are not gender neutral and because the COVID-19 pandemic is a crisis, you look at one of the UN reports, for example, recently stated that approximately 70% of global respondents to this pandemic are women, you know. But in the same breath, in the same breath of having 70% of global respondents as women, the report states that approximately 96 million people by the end of 2021 shall be pushed into extreme poverty. And out of that number, 47 million are women and girls. When we talk about the impact, the social economic impact, I know there's been a lot of conversations on how the pandemic is impacting people. So as you submit to this question, one, on how the pandemic is impacting people, part B is, are we prepared for the reality of the push back on poverty, especially for women and girls as a country? Kemi, do you want to take that first?
Kemi? First?
I had asked Kemi to go, but our internet might be acting up. Would you like to go first?
It's okay. I can go.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Talking about the pandemic and the people, first of all, in the aspect of Uganda, we should first think about if the pandemic in itself, I think it was like the last nail in the coffin. It's not like we were like doing so well, especially when it comes to microeconomic, in microeconomics where individuals are catered for. No, for us it's been a government thing, it's been a political thing. So people have been affected like so much, and the poverty levels are definitely going to rise. And the reason they're even going to rise much more is that the reliefs that are coming in, the budget is being the expenditure budget is so high. When we look at the reports, we find that the 2021 budget, the expenditure has increased. But in what way? Because the relief fund that is coming in is actually not going to the people. It's going to a few hands. So it's not like the people have been really doing well. No, people have been scratching for themselves and surviving in this economy. And so COVID coming, it was like I said, it was the last nail. And now people, even in the recovery, it's not like the government is thinking about how are people going to recover, because here we are in the second lockdown. The first lockdown, yes, we were all scared, and then people got into the lockdown, and then the government tried to like put up this whole relief of giving people food and whatever. But how many households received food? If we have to talk about the 40 million plus people in Uganda, no, I mean, not everyone got food, and even those who got, it was not like it was the best of food. Of course, I know even when people vent for themselves, they will not have the best, but when you try to come also, yeah, make it better. So people have been affected and are going to continue to be affected because the situation is not being saved by them getting out of lockdown. And even when they get out of lockdown, the government expenditure and budget is increasing and it's not going to the people. So they're just going to like recover on their own and find means. And then when we talk about the country being prepared, I think as much as the leader keeps referring to it as war, I mean war in the sense of we need to find tactics of how we're going to go about this. It's been 2 years, like it's been a whole year now since last year, 21st March, when the first lockdown was announced. And then we get into almost June. Those were 3 months of people being locked down. And then now, and people suffered a lot of crisis in there. And then after that, of course, after the 6 months, the year ends and people are trying to recover. And then children are going back to school. And now we get into a second wave where they just lock down. No preparation, no nothing. And I don't know, because we're seeing many other countries getting into the second wave, but we did not prepare. I must say, yes, the government did not prepare. And that's why people have been finding measures to forge way through it. Like now people will just walk and operate their business as usual. You will meet the border guys taking the risky ride, because the country did not prepare for the second wave. And so when it came in, we're just like, okay, not again. Like, okay, it's coming again. I mean, we're still in panic, and that's why we're having a lot of mental issues for young people. We're having a lot of people thinking, where are we headed? People are not even like doing the best of what they have to do. They can't even, they were still covering the areas of the last lockdown, and then we are still getting into another wave. And so I think, first of all, the government was not prepared, that even when the second wave came in, we are still seeing them not sure of like how the expenditure was going. Like people contributed money, and then here we are, we can't account for the money, we can't put anything to the money, and then we're in a second wave, and hospitals still don't have oxygen cylinders, hospitals are still lacking ambulances, hospitals are still lacking beds, people are still dying, the RDC still don't have enough letters to give to people. So it's bad. And so when we look at both the micro and macroeconomics, it's not helping. We are not prepared, and we're just getting into war and armed and everything else. So for me, that's my take, Bella, on the COVID affecting people as a whole, and then the preparedness. We are not prepared, and people are going to keep being affected because we are not meeting what exactly we should have made. Yes, I understand. Maybe the last part, we were scared, and then we collected money and all these relief things and tried to have all the conversations on how we lay strategies. But as soon as the lockdown got done, every book was covered. Every data that was found was covered. And here we are in the second lockdown, still trying. And then we are uncovering the books and saying, we're opening the books and saying, okay, which chapter had we stopped? Where can we start again? And we're looking for all these bookmarks and we can't find. So it's not fine. It's not cool.
Thank you very much, Joanna. And you know, again, thank you very much for your submission, because you lay a good foundation, especially for Kemi as she comes in. Because we're saying, okay, every report says this thing is not going away. Every report says the worst has not yet passed. And if we're talking about poverty, even before the pandemic, women being pushed to the edges of poverty conversation. So, Liz, as you come in, are we prepared? Are we prepared in terms of safety, especially given the fact that even in just over a year, we've had as much ravage done on the economy, as much ravage made on people's societal existence. But then also, as you answer that question, I would like you to bring in the different faces of women, because we might be having a conversation like this as women who are protected from poverty to a certain extent, because we have jobs, because our donors are still running. But we have homes where everyone in the home is an informal worker. We have families where everyone in the family is not an essential worker. But then we also have other different categories of women, like for example, the sex workers whose business literally died. You have the aspect of single mothers who either give birth at the start of the lockdown, or even even within the context that we are discussing right now. So are we prepared for this poverty that the world has already predicted? Over to you.
Thank you, Isabella. It's true, pandemics, epidemics, crises, health or otherwise, are not gender neutral. I'll just give an example of the LRA war in northern Uganda and its gendered effects, and how the fact that the women were not at the center, how that has affected the processes around transitional justice in Uganda. I feel like when you look at Ebola, who are the people that were suffering most? Who are people in the markets? When you look at cholera and how we managed it, what lessons did we learn from it? How are the countries learning from some of those epidemics in the past, and how to be more gender responsive in the kind of actions that government takes? So those are some of the questions that I was thinking about, some of the things that I was thinking about while you asked your questions. True, the crises are not gender neutral, and yeah, COVID is one of those. And it is actually very surprising and very disappointing that we continue to, in this country, we continue to operate like a crisis is neutral gender-wise, but also that it has no class, that it's all kumbaya, really. Yeah, that's what it seems like from the nature of responses that we have seen. One, I'll just start with where we began from, like the closing down and the restrictions. I do not want to get into those because we all know the problems with those. They've called women in the markets warriors and heroes for sleeping in the markets. Yeah. But also, even just that was the first one. We now have a second wave, which is not taking into consideration some of the lessons that we believe that should have been learned in the first place. And I'll just give the same example of women that slept in the markets in the first lockdown that are doing the same in this second lockdown. When you look at the people at the front line, in the first lockdown, we had doctors in public hospitals complaining that they did not have PPEs, and that many of them, I remember reading a story from one of the nurses in Ajumani, who was the first to come out and say, me, I'm going to treat, regardless of what's happening, I'll treat the people with this strange disease that we are dealing with. But it's because many of them were worried. There was not enough information about COVID-19, even among the health workers. Right, we're all dealing with something strange, and really appreciate that, especially as a health crisis. But provide the necessities. Who is at the forefront in the health workers? It's the women, the nurses that are doing this work. We know that women are frontline workers in the health sector. And if many of them do not have PPPs, that means many of them are struggling. Two, when we go to access to the vaccine, in the first lockdown, we did not have so much hope for the vaccine. I do not want to get into the conversation of the TRIPS waiver and how the poor countries like Uganda are doing with access to vaccines. But it also has a class issue on it, because we are not as wealthy. We are third world countries, and we are dependent on a lot of aid and borrowing from many of these financial institutions. We continue to struggle with those issues. But even with the few vaccines that we have, who is accessing them? Just, was it today, seeing in the newspapers over the internet that this rich man who gave us 500 million in cash is receiving 2,000 doses for his workers? I mean, how are you not seeing that is expanding already? The gap between the poor and the rich? That means even on who accesses the vaccine in this country is an issue of concern. Who are okay, maybe most of the workers that he might have are women, but how sure are we that they are going to these workers, right? When we speak about access to vaccine, I cannot not speak about the access to these services, to health services, treatment, and etc. We have seen the cost, 2 million to 5 million per day. How many women from Nakawa market can afford that? We saw one of the women who was sleeping in the markets in Nakawa just drop and die. She had been sleeping in the market for over a week or two. Yeah, so this pandemic is definitely, for everything that is happening right now, it's showing us that women are suffering. But even within the women, we're not homogeneous, right? So there are women that are protected. I'm able to sit on my laptop now and continue to work and earn a living. A woman in Nakawa may not be able to. While we've had institutions, CSOs, that are trying to, for example, put their work on digital and be able to sell. Not every woman in the market is able to do that. Apart from that, women that are working in plantations, women in flower farms, remember the first lockdown, many of them were laid off with no hope of going back. On getting back to the same farms, they were giving them almost half the pay that they were receiving the first time because they know that they're desperate. So we have way too many examples that will show you that crises of this nature from way back, when you look at polio, who was accessing, when you look at cholera, if you are poor, if you had sanitation issues that were caused by lack of clean water, which is mostly by the poor, by the peri-urban poor people in this country. All this go to show you that this crisis, class, it's gendered in all ways. When we look at on recovery, Bella, you asked about how ready we are on recovery. What is the recovery looking like? I think our road to recovery is very daunting, really, quite honestly. One, I'll look at it from this perspective. Who is at the table making decisions on what a recovery plan should look like? What does Uganda's stimulus package or plan look like? Who has accessed it? Who is at the table to advise and say, this will work and this will not work? I'll give a comparison. Can lockdown, the government must have learned lessons. I cannot even list how many CSOs shared concerns with how food relief was distributed, with the romanticization of the fact that people in the villages or in the rural areas have a lot of food. We know food is produced in seasons, right? Did the government check to see that this was the season for food to be produced? But we know that a lot of people do not actually have their own land on which they are doing this agriculture. And we know most of these are women, right? So in this second lockdown, we clapped our hands when we heard we are going to receive money, cash, But who advised on how cash should be distributed? If it's an emergency fund and it's coming almost 30 days later, is it still doing the job it's supposed to be as an emergency fund? If it is 100 UGX and your boss is telling us even the poorest family to survive on the bare minimum should have at least UGX 150 or 165 UGX, then where is the science there? Balance me. How is the government even looking at its own reports from UBOS to say, this is what we are basing on what basis the categories that receive this money? And that's just even with the food. When we look at generally, get away from the micro level to the macro level, and on trade and women right now, I know that a lot of women right now are not able to trade, right? Now, who is part of these conversations that are talking about economic recovery? With the first lockdown, many people were pushed into poverty. But that is not, I don't want to say that COVID was the only pusher to poverty. I don't know if I'm making sense. That there were already situations, were already a weak economy, right? That women were surviving on almost 2,000 Uganda shillings a day. That in a day she will sell 10,000, will pay space in a market on a stall, and will pay 1,000 or 2,000 for that stall space a day. Then we'll have to go back and use 8,000 for her family, but also it's the same capital money. So the pandemic already found economies that were weak. And we cannot talk about economic recovery without talking about the health aspect, because really, if you're not healthy, if your citizens are not healthy, who will be paying you the taxes that you'll be using to, to construct these roads, because we are not working, we are out of business, and this city and etc. and etc. So just to close this, Bella, I am worried that we are going to go back to a state where we may never recover from. For me, that's my biggest worry. We are going to go back to a place, it's derailing a lot of work that the government has done in several sectors if we continue to move the way we are moving. When we look at accountability for monies and economic recovery, there's so much money that's been borrowed. That's a conversation for the whole day on how this public debt is affecting especially women. They continue to now tax us to be able to cover these gaps, yet we are not even getting the services that we're being taxed for. So at the end of the day, the whole economy needs an overhaul to start working. I do not like to use the phrase building back better, because I don't think we need to build back. I think let's overhaul the whole system, because where we were then, that we are trying to get back to. Things were not working. Things are getting worse. Let us just begin building afresh. Let's begin building new systems on who is being taxed. Can we tax the wealthy more as we are talking about building the economy? Can we look at health workers as human beings, as people at the front line, and actually provide them with the services they need to do their work? Are we as the state able to hold our government accountable for the losses that are being made now, or the mismanagement in all this money that's being borrowed? Do we have the capacity, even as CSOs, right now to do that work? Just that, I think it was a week ago, as I conclude on this question, Bella, a week ago or so, we had a tweet chat at FIDA, and we're looking at what a gender responsive plan would look like. And most of the responses from the conversation were showing you that there is a breakdown of trust between communities, citizens, and the state. And that came from the question that we're asking the state and society relations right now in reference to COVID. So if there is no trust between the citizens and the government, it means there's no platform for accountability, which means money is going to continue to be borrowed, but not be used for what it's supposed to be used for. And no one is going to hold the government accountable. So I think we are a sinking boat. Let's overhaul the whole system altogether. Thanks, Bella.
Thank you very much, Kemi, for your elaborate submissions. And you see, when you ask who is making these decisions, who is thinking through this, just brought two instances to me. The first one is the procurement of these over 200 pickups at a time when there are national referral hospitals that do not even have gloves, do not have essentials to be able to run, but pickups are being bought, and the conversation of classism and privilege in our faces. But the other, with Prima Kwagala of the Women's Pro Bono Initiative, whose work has to continue even within the context of the pandemic. I think that would also still fall under the FIDA question. But the conversation I was having with Prima was around, she was talking about the COVID committee, and the fact that the task force had not, for example, looked or was not amplifying conversations around women's obstetric care within the pandemic, to say that how are we making sure that less mothers are dying at home? How are we making sure that women who have COVID can still safely give birth? Those are conversations that we are not having. And maybe at this time, I will bring in Joanna and ask Joanna that after Kemi's conversation, and also the context of literally limited conversations around COVID response and obstetric care, among others, do you think that the population, especially the women that we're talking about today, understand the gravity that is before them? Because for me, where I am sitting with all the information that I have right now, I could easily conclude that this country really hates me and just wants me to die. But that is me, because I have a lot of information. Do you think that the women in this country understand the gravity and extent of problem that we are facing with as a result of this pandemic? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bella. So first of all, Ugandans need to know, leave alone me and you who can sit in our rooms and read and have all this information. Yes, the government has failed us, and we just need to know that it is man for himself and God for us all. So from Kemi's submission, Kemi, thank you so much. I can still say and boldly say that the women, those who are informed, are aware of how best they can jump out of it. But a woman who is always voting somewhere in a rural area, in a village, who thinks that because a member of parliament gave her 10,000 and then they voted and now they're waiting on relief money, I don't know. Unfortunately, whoever can get this information back to them, tell them it's like just continue figuring out a way that you can deal with this. But that relief money, first of all, when we talk about this whole relief money, the questions that come to my mind are, where is it? Like, where is it coming from? How much is it? Who gets it? Through which channels, and after how long? Because now, where this money, first of all, the government is borrowing and borrowing more money every other day. Like, we are seeing billions and billions of money being borrowed on top of what the citizens from their small and money gave in, 29 billion. That is what, anyway, they could say. We don't know how much more was there and not announced. So where is the money they are talking about to give us relief fund? And then how much are they giving to these women? Like, first of all, are they even considering which population should get first? I don't think so, because the last call we had from Honorable Nabanja was of some random border man from Gulu, and we're not even sure if it was not okay. I don't want to be negative right now, but yes, he received the money, and I don't know how many other. The next report was that every like 6 municipalities, like 6 people have received the COVID fund relief, and I'm asking myself, how many people are in a municipality? How many women are in a municipality? How many families are in a single municipality in Uganda? And how many do we have anyway? And when you tell me 6 people have already received in a space, like from the time she promised the money and the time all these things are coming up, it's been like 2 months now. So after 2 months, 6 people in one municipality have received the money. I'm just trying to think, okay, who are they? And then how much are they getting, and how much do they spend on each household? Because these women, much as they would wake up and go to their markets and do whatever they have to do, and then they can be able to come back and think about how to apportion this money and how to see that the family goes on. Then now you come in that you're going to give relief fund, and then how much is it? But are they even receiving it? Who is getting it? I mean, this joke has been going around that you even need to be connected to be vulnerable. So I'm asking myself, how many vulnerable women do we have in Uganda that do not even know, like, even their district councillors? Because I understand every district in Uganda, every council in Uganda has a female representative. But how many of these women have actually gone back to look at what is befalling the women in their local councils? And so, Bella, this question really, really bothers me, that women do not know what is coming for them. And now, even us who know, we're asking ourselves, okay, like, I know nothing is coming, then what next? Okay, I can put up something for myself. I can try and make ends meet in my own way. But this woman in Nakawa market, this woman in Nakasero market, who has abandoned her family to come and stay in the market and be able to send money back home, which is not even enough, because now people before would go to the market and then they purchase all that they want to purchase. Like, when you've gone to the market, somehow you'll even end up buying things you've not going to buy. But now when you send someone to go, like the border man who will go, you will tell him, I need this A, B, C, D, and that's how they'll just pick it randomly from wherever. So it means some women actually end a whole day when they've not sold anything in those markets. So how are they even, how are we sure they're going to keep like doing whatever they have to do to make their families like stay on moving? Because as much as the government is trying to, are they even trying? I don't even think so. Like, I don't think so, because most of the women that we think should be who are all happy when the cabinet list got up, and then we were all having all these women in influential positions. Are they even influential positions? Anyway, we're having women on the table of discussion, but then they can receive something and put food on the table for their families. But these other women, who they are representing, do not have anything to, and do not have anyone to cry to. Like, they will literally sit down and know that I am here for my children. These women that are dying in markets every single day, and it will be news all over the place and all that. But I have not even seen any woman from the political angle or from the government, so we call it, come out to say we need to do something, unless the CSOs do these discussions and call someone on table to say, hey, as the government, as a Ministry of Gender, what do you have for us? I have no, I don't know, maybe I'm not informed enough, but I've not seen like political leaders, government people, even the caucus of women sit down and say, we need to find something moving. So Bella, when you say that, are these women prepared? Like, are they prepared for what is coming? No, they are not prepared, because even the women that we think are at the forefront of this are not planning anything for us. Like, they are literally not, they have failed us. They're not planning anything for us, and they're just on their own trying to do whatever they can to make their own ends meet. I have honestly, apart from when you say we're holding a discussion like this, let's call Honorable so and so, and they get here, and even when they get here, they talk for themselves. They will not talk for every other woman. They will not, because after that, I've not even seen uh like even like a group of women member of parliament, the whoppers sitting down and say, like, maybe to even have a discussion somewhere and say, what next for our women, what next for our children, Ministry of Gender, what next for the youth? No, i I honestly don't know. So Bella, yes, you're not alone. This government has failed us. That's all I can say. This government has failed us, and yes, we are not prepared, and I don't think we are ever going to be prepared for this, because every wave that comes, we are going back to the, like I said, we are going back to the same book. Oh, where did we drop the books? What had we planned? And then we get back. Like, we are always at the planning level, always at the planning level. How, like, for how long are we going to be on the planning level to get back to the community people and say, hey, when the first wave came in, this is what we planned. And we said, when the next wave comes in, we are not going to be the same. No, we have gone back to planning. We are going back to lockdown, and we're asking, okay. And then talking about the money that was meant for pickups and all these things. At first, it was for pickups to help the RDCs and whatever. Then now we get in the second wave and we are talking about ambulances. But then even the ambulances are not being seen. Then after very many discussions of saying, no, the government promised us money, and then these new parliamentarians are saying, where is so and so? We need this money accounted for. Someone is like, so we had thought of buying pickups, then the ambulances, but now we are saying we don't even have the oxygen cylinders in the hospitals. So where the pickups were not bought, the ambulances were not bought, there are no oxygen cylinders, where did the money go? And now it is when we are planning to buy pickups. I mean, you don't start looking for shelter when it starts raining. Like, if the rain hits you this month, make sure the next season, in the between the dry season, you actually construct shelter for yourself. Like, you just can't keep constructing. You start, you get building materials, put them on the ground, and then when the rain stops, you stop on that. Then when it comes again, then you start adding other materials. And that's how the government of Uganda is operating. And trust me, like, believe me, we are not getting off that stage unless we hold these people accountable and say, hey, now, because I mean, this is the new normal. COVID is here to stay. I don't think COVID is going away in, not even in 5 years' time. Like, even if the vaccines come and the drugs come and we have all these creative people, pharmacists creating drugs, it is here to stay. Ebola has never gone. Typhoid has never gone. It's a thing of, okay, now we have antibacterials in the hospital, so you can go and get treatment. So that's going to be the same case with COVID. But how are we going to manage? The other day, I saw reports that an ambulance in Gulu had broke down, and so all the patients were just there stranded. No one was moving anywhere, and we are saying, not again, like, not again. So Bella, women and I, like myself and my fellow women, we are not prepared, including the men meanwhile, because the other day a man in this old bus terminal passed on because he was always lifting luggage for people, and now the luggage is no more. There is no public transport, and he collapsed and died due to hunger. So if such a man who can even go and probably carry other people in the communities fails to do that, like fails to find something to do, what of my women who are now looking at themselves and their children? So I just think the government has failed us. Yeah. Thank you, Bella.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Joanna. And bringing in Kemi. So one of the threads that's going through this conversation is the thread on social security. So where's the social security? Where's the safety? Where are the safety nets for the population, one, but where are the safety nets for the women? Where are the safety nets for the girls? But more importantly, where are the safety nets for communities that were already disadvantaged, like refugee communities? Where are the safety nets for categories, women or not, that have historically been left behind? And after the conversation with Joanna, one of the things that I remembered, even with the Nabanja money handouts, was the conversation around data. As a country, do we have data to even tell us how many poor people are there, where they are located? Like, and in the absence of data, then how is it that we are planning for this pandemic? Yes, over to
Yes, thank you, Bella. I think I'll begin with your last concern. One, I remember, I think there's a tweet chat last week hosted by Isa, where they had a speaker from UBOS who really agreed that the data available right now may not possibly serve the purpose for some of these programs that are in place, which takes us back to the question, how is the government planning? And sometimes it really breaks my heart, because I know the government has a lot of support, even from just civil society, people that they can collaborate with to put together some of these resources that could be useful right now. So I ask myself the same question, Bella, how are we planning for people that we do not know? Yeah, and that's why someone can even question, who are these people receiving these cash handouts that we are using this second as a relief for the second period? And then, sorry, Bella, your first question, I lost you for a bit, but your first question, was on social protection. I had something about social protection, right? The safety nets in place. One of the things that have been broken, like I was saying before, during this second lockdown response, has been the trust, the social between citizens of Uganda and their government. One, because I feel like the citizens of Uganda have constantly fulfilled their bargain, fulfilled their bargain of that contract. How? People are constantly paying taxes, all these new taxes that do come in place. And sometimes I worry, like Joanna, you did about, or like actually Isabella asked before, do some of the people, some of the women that are less advantaged, some of the people that have been historically left behind, do they know what this period actually means for them? Do they know what the new taxes then mean for their businesses or mean for their survival in the long run? Whose job is it to make them know what the impact is or what these things mean to them? Is it the CSOs that are doing the work? Is it the government? Is it collective effort? Is it going to be the collective effort of feminists in this country, the women's movement? I really don't know. It's for all of us to collectively think, whose job is it to let those that may not be aware what the impact of all this is. But back to your questions on social protection, Isabella, like I was saying before, our social protection mechanisms have not been very strong. Though Uganda has been trying, the government in the different line ministries has been trying to do their work. I know that under Ministry of Gender, they've been trying to develop these policies. SAGE is only protection for the elderly and etc. But I know that also SAGE had its issues on how the money was distributed. You know, it necessitated the old women to move to the destination of the car from the government to receive this money. So how can we, sorry, so how can we ensure that social protection mechanisms or social protection policies, one, are in place? Like I've mentioned, the Ministry of Gender has been doing this. And I really want to appreciate the work that was done with SAGE, that I know there are many elderly women that actually received money, but in a very inhumane manner. You could see women that were unable to work from their different homes. While I know why the government did that was to block, I don't know if you heard about the very many stories that were going around about people pretending to be relatives of the old ladies and the old men and receiving money on their behalf. And I know the government was trying to curb that. And that's why, for example, it insisted that let the old women come themselves and pick their money. But one of the responses I remember I saw in the paper, someone writing about, was on what having a local council system that actually works, that actually has a database of these people, so that at the end of the day, we are not questioning why Elizabeth is receiving money for a certain woman, right? Because the local council ones are at the bottom of the administrative structures in this country. And the assumption is they know the number of people in their villages. And I think that's why still right now, many people insist that you have a letter from your local council. But if that wasn't in place, then who is having this information? If the LC1 does not have it, WOBOS can't have it, right? So how is the government operating? So the social protection mechanisms, say first in terms of percentages, I would say what, like 35 or 40. A lot needs to be done. The fact that we are operating in a state with no minimum wage, proper minimum wage, really, and looking at how the private sector and business enterprises and cooperatives are operating in the market. The fact that we still have women in the flower farms that earn as low as 3,000 per day, and overtime of every hour at 1,000 Uganda shillings. The fact that that still happens will show you that sort of social protection is a myth.
Elizabeth?
I think our network.
Elizabeth? Okay. It seems like we have lost her. But as we wait for her, as we wait for Elizabeth to come, we're coming to the end of the program. And now she's left the call. So as we come to the end of the program, to you, Joanna, what are some of the most tangible ways, both in the short run and the long run, that our government can lessen the already bad socio-economic impact that the pandemic has had on the population? And in the event that there's something that they're doing right, what is that right thing that can be amplified? Elizabeth, you're back, but we can't see you. No, it's okay. It's perfectly fine. I'm just saying we acknowledge that you're back. And so we are closing, and as we close, I'd like Joanna to go first, and then we will close and summarize whatever it is we might have missed. But for Joanna, what are some of the tangible things, both short and long term, that the government can put in place, especially, that they can put in place that can lessen the burden and extent of the socioeconomic impact on women? And two, are there things that you feel that the government is doing right that they can continue to do well? And are there things that they need to drop as of yesterday so that we can be able to move on and attempt to regain our lives? even within the context of this pandemic. Over to you, Joanna.
Okay, thank you, Bella. Before Elizabeth went off, she was talking about the minimum wage, and we're looking at, first of all, just if I get to the conclusion, the normal monthly earnings for women are estimated at 110,000, and yet which is the medium actually, that's a medium for men at 220,000. So what are we saying? What does this imply? That much of the labor for women has been unpaid labor. Like they're always trying to juggle between paid labor. They're always rather trying to juggle between productive and unproductive, productive and reproductive roles. So at the end of the day, we are seeing women were already earning half of what men are earning. So when we are hit with such a pandemic, we are saying yes, and we must applaud the government of Uganda for allowing, like, putting all some bit of gender equality policies here and there, and now we have over like 10 women have been recorded to be in the working sector and are employed, and this is about 75%. As much as the sectors are informal and all that, at least we appreciate the fact that they are there. And I must say, yes, thank you. But despite the existence of all these equal opportunities, when we look at the Commission Act and on gender equality for women empowerment and all that, we still have occupational segregation. It's still high. So what I would ask the government to do, first of all, is to ensure that, yes, the 75% of women that are in employment, can they make a leveled ground for them to also get into a higher minimum wage for this work, and also get into the formal sectors, and when they're there, can we see more women in positions of influence? Like, just, okay, not to say that some of these political positions don't have influence, but there are some positions they give women, and you also, like, we also know that this one has just been put there to fulfill the affirmative action and just be there. Like, they will literally not say anything. And then, so we need more women in positions of influence. Like, let's go like, this government needs to go beyond the affirmative action of just having women representatives to having actually women in positions of influence. Secondly, when these women are given positions, let's not have a one-man say. Like, at the end of the day, we always see everything about whatever has to be done has to be, okay, the president has the right to sign all these policies and treaties and whatever for implementation. But can we see these women who understand women issues be on the table to say, no, this is working for or against us? So I think we just need to have, what the government of Uganda needs to do right now is to put a leveled table for these women, that as much as they're trying to see them get where they are, we also see them getting more in the formal sector, and not just get there, but be there to influence as well. And that will give us, that will give women to a chance to put up policies and measures that are pro women. Otherwise, we're going to keep in this cycle of saying, oh, we have a vice president who is a woman, we have a prime minister who is a woman, but even when the prime minister is a woman, she comes up and says, I am going to help all these girls with this and this, and then the president has to take another 2 years to sign it. We saw the government pledging to give the girls sanitary pads, to provide school-going girls with sanitary pads, but up to today, I have never met anywhere a pack of sanitary pads that it has been donated by government. Like, I have never. Maybe where they put them, I don't see there, but we just need government to like implement and make sure people are influential, not to just give women these positions. I mean, all the district councillor seats, all the district council seats have women, but what are these women doing? Most of them are there and they're also waiting. It's the men who have a say, it's the men who always have a say, this and that and the other. So let's move away from the normal of affirmative action and look at more of effectiveness, look at more of efficiency, more of influence. Yeah, for me, I think that is going to be first. And then I wish the government can be more accountable. I mean, we can't just keep getting money and we don't know how they disappear. We don't know what exactly happens. And the government and the president stands and says, yes, that money was eaten, but I don't know who ate it, and I'm going to like make things work out because I have to find out who ate the money. And we're like, really? Like, you're just going to find out who ate the money? Okay. So my take is that we need to hold this government more accountable. And then the women that we send to represent us, they just need to be more effective. Yeah, let them just not be there because affirmative action says so. So my whole take on this, on every debate about women and what the government needs to do, I think we need to go beyond the affirmative action and look at efficiency, look at influence, look at effectivity as far as implementation of these policies concerning women and the economy and the social aspects are concerned. Thank you, Bella.
Thank you very much, Joanna. And at this point, I'm going to invite Elizabeth from the last submission that she made. So, Kemi, you're welcome. Elizabeth? Okay. It seems like we have lost her. And yeah, and yet we have to really wrap this up. And so on behalf of the Center for Constitutional Governance, I would like to say a big thank you to you, Joanna, and a big thank you to Elizabeth, who has been on and off this call. And maybe that's one of the things that the government should tangibly do, that within this context that we have more people working from home and more pressures on the internet in the different communities, but also issues of infrastructure. One of the ways that we can secure or buffer the economy is by ensuring that you don't have such interruptions in people's work. But also in terms of going forward, I know that a step in the right direction, really, I'm one of those people who believes that that money handout was probably not as bad. And I applaud the Prime Minister for that money handout. My only challenge to that money handout was one that it was offered in the absence of a data understanding of where it was going, how many people needed it, and what was the criteria for who was poor, and so on and so forth. But if that had been addressed, that would be a good plan. Of course, also going forward is to say, how are we supporting women-led businesses within the pandemic? And that would be a good plan to hear the government on within this context. But also for families, like I said earlier, who are headed by people who work heavily in the informal sector. And we know the extent to which lockdowns like this affect the informal sector. What is the government plan for addressing that? And in the absence of data, it's hard for government to plan. It's also hard for government to rightfully point a finger and say this is where the money should go. But it's also to say that if we have a health sector, to what extent is the health policy and health programs being readjusted to suit the pandemic, or not really to suit the pandemic, but in what way is it being adjusted to suit the times that we are in? If we have, for example, education, a lot of us have nieces, nephews, children, and I'm not sure how many of us are saying, at what level will our children be 10 years from now if they've already missed out on 2 years of school? How are they going to be able to compete on the region? Because Kenya is open, Tanzania is open. So how are our children competing regionally in 10 years? How are our children going to compete globally in 10 years if they've already lost 2 years of school? What is the education plan for that? You know? And so when we talk about socioeconomic impact. Yes, there is the impact in the short run, which is what a lot of us are seeing. But in the long run, how is this affecting our education sector? What effects heavily going to be on the health sector if we continue losing doctors at the rate that we are losing them? What is the impact going to be generally on our economy if we are not buffering it? And so if you're watching, and especially if you're a woman, it's not enough to say that we are in a pandemic. We all know we are in a pandemic. I think the bigger question we should be asking is, what is our worst case scenario? And how are we ensuring that we don't get to it? Or how are we protecting ourselves within our worst case scenario? I see Kemi has joined us. If she can say anything, we will be able to hear her closing remarks, and then we should be able to wind up this show. Elizabeth, are you ready to join us? Elizabeth? Okay, unfortunately, we can't. Okay, she's connecting. Again, these are things that the government needs to really pointed to, important dockets like important dockets like the Ministry of ICT.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Please come in. Yes, please come in and submit. And it goes. Hello, we can hear you.
I didn't hear your last question.
So my last question was the same as the one that I had asked Joanna. Remember Joanna's question? So
I don't.
Okay, so what can the government tangibly do in the short run and the long run to lessen the impact, the negative socioeconomic impact of the pandemic on the women of this country, but also on the general population? Elizabeth? Okay. I think we have lost her again, and I think we really, really need to close this call. And so on behalf of Civic Space TV and on behalf of the Center for Constitutional Governance, we thank you for having joined us on this call. Also last week, we had a mental health show, and we had promised to submit contacts. The contacts finally came through. So in case you need support from the last show, don't hesitate to tweet at us or to ask for it, and we shall ably give it to you. Otherwise, from us to you, happy Eid, and please say hello to your families, and thank you for joining us. Have a good afternoon.